Today, the Speaker of the National Assembly, what's his name? Papa wa Roma.
Which was his name? Our
National Assembly. Yes. Moses Mithika Wetangula.
Yes.
He wrote to members and he gazetted this and said, you know what, I know we're on recess, but I want to call a special sitting for 13th of May, Monday, today, so that we can discuss a report from a committee that this assembly established to look into the impeachment motion for the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Agriculture, the Honorable Franklin Mithika Linturi. That committee had its sittings last week. That committee is presenting its report today. The nation has information about what the committee will be saying. And what does it say? Mithika Linturi.
MPs let Linturi off the hook in probe.
Where?
And that's a bold headline.
Sindio, eh?
Yes, and the committee hasn't even met.
They have met. they just have not formally presented this thing in front of on the floor of the House. A special committee has cleared Agriculture CS Mithika Linturi of any wrongdoing in the scandal regarding the sale of fake fertilizer to farmers under the National Government Subsidy Program. A member of the committee who spoke to the nation claimed MPs were carefully selected to save Linturi.
So then why is a special meeting being called by the...
To discuss the report of the committee.
So the report...
The nation is reporting what's in the report.
So the nation were part of that committee?
The nation wako na watu ndani.
Yeah, your kamati.
Yeah. When the other guys also selecting people to save Linturi, the nation was also selecting people to give them information.
To report on this matter of Linturi.
Yeah? We want to discuss that with a lawyer. So what does it mean? Okay? What does it mean when we've seen impeachments in the Senate, County Assembly, Senate. We see those impeachments. We have not seen an impeachment going to a committee, blah, 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 in the National Assembly. This is the first one.
It is.
Mithika Linturi had wanted to present a motion for impeaching Anne Waiguru as a cabinet secretary. This same Mithika Linturi. This same Mithika Linturi did not actually do like what the MP for Bumula did. He didn't appear in Parliament to present his case. So that motion flopped. This time, this committee has been formed and Mithika Linturi is now the man to be discussed. We're having that conversation for the next 1 hour with Elias Mutuma, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Good morning, Wakili.
Thank you so much, Eric, and good morning. And thank you for having me, and thank you to City.
Karibu sana to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Asante sana.
There's a lot to discuss. City.
Yes.
Anko. Sasa wakili yako hapa. Should give him the day's proverb.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the Republic of Malawi. White teeth are no guarantee against bad breath.
White teeth are no guarantee against bad breath.
Yes.
Wow.
Wakili, what do you think the Malawians are saying?
I don't know whether it's a compliment or otherwise, but I think it's
the
true.
Truth.
So you do not judge a book by its cover. I think that's what they mean. That's how I understand it. Yeah.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
No.
Why not? What are the
because
perils
things
of
do
doing
not
that?
always seem as they look. There is something beneath what you see. There's always something. Yeah.
Something deeper than this.
Exactly.
Do you think there's something deeper to what we are seeing with the move to impeach the CS, Mithika Linturi?
No, I think what we see in this case is what is there. This is the exception. This is the exception. What is seen is what is there.
Which is what?
Yeah,
in
we
your
will
opinion?
be discussing that in the next 45 minutes.
In your opinion, we are beginning that conversation now. So we've seen, so first of all, we want to understand the law.
Yes.
All right? So the impeachment of governors is what we have interacted with. Since 2013, we have seen county assembly moves a motion, goes ahead to vote either to impeach or not impeach a governor. In many cases, they flop at the county assembly stage. When they pass, then they come to the Senate, and now we are, treated to a national spectacle where we watch either a committee being formed or the entire House forming itself into a committee and saying we want to particularly investigate this particular matter. It's the first time we are seeing this over cabinet secretary. Is the law the same on those two methods of impeachment?
Thank you, Eric. I have had the benefit of participating actively in 3 impeachment processes, 2 for defending a sitting governor, that is Governor Kawira of Meru, successfully, I must say. And recently I prosecuted the impeachment process for the deputy governor of Kisii, again successfully, but at the Senate. This is the very first time that the National Assembly is having such a process post 2010. Previously we've had, remember the case of Kimunya, that was there.
Yeah.
But post 2010, this is the very first time that the National Assembly is conducting such an exercise. So it's also a try and error for them. They must have been, of course, excited by this process because, it's a first trial. And when you're doing something for the very first time, there is that excitement. Having said that, an impeachment process is supposed to be a legal process. But obviously that is not the situation. Why is it supposed to be an a legal process? Is because by its very nature, an impeachment is a trial. And trials are supposed to be governed by our constitution, especially Article 50, the right to fair hearing, the right to be heard. Rarely is that the case in an impeachment process. One is that in an impeachment process, or rather in any trial, be it a disciplinary action, be it a civil case, be it a criminal case, be it a quasi-judicial process, the first thing that you're supposed to have as an accused person is the right to confront your accuser. You have a right to know who your accuser is. And that's why, if you're very keen with the defense team representing the CS, they kept on arguing that we are not facing our real accuser here. Okay? The person we are facing here is just a proxy for someone else. So we need to have our moment with the accuser. And they kept on, pointing a finger at the ex-wife to, I don't know whether it's the ex-wife, but...
he described her as friend.
As a friend.
Ex-friend.
Yes. A friend wife. Yes. So they kept on saying, we need to confront our accuser. And that's a fundamental right, because if you do not know the person accusing you, then how are you supposed to defend yourself? You need to have that moment with them, cross-examine them, get to unmask them.
Okay.
The other issue, of course, is the right to access evidence against you that forms the basis of the accusation. This is done by the accuser giving you all materials they have in good time, so that you're able to analyze the materials, punch holes, and frame your defense, depending on what material is brought before you. Again, in impeachment processes, that is rarely the case, because there is too little time for such things to happen. The select committee is supposed to conduct its business within 10 days. That is hardly enough to even go through the entire forest of documents and understand exactly who is accusing me, why are they accusing me, is the information verifiable, is it accurate? Again, that's why I'm saying it's not a legal process, because if it were a legal process, strictly speaking, then you would have that time to prepare your defense.
Yeah.
But the most intriguing part about impeachment processes is that when you look at Article 50, it makes it compulsory that for every person who is facing a trial of whatever kind must be given an opportunity to appear before an impartial tribunal. A fact finder who is sitting to pass judgment on you must be impartial.
Yeah.
So in such a process where an impeachment process is being undertaken by a select committee of parliament, can we argue that they're impartial? Impartiality means, number one, that the fact finder has no interest in the matter.
Yeah.
They have no position. They are not biased.
Yeah.
But in this instance, one, the motion itself emanates from Parliament.
Right.
The select committee are members of Parliament.
Yes.
So in essence, they are the prosecutors. You might have Wamboka being the mover of the motion, but this is a motion that has been endorsed by the House. So the select committee is in essence the prosecutor in this motion. So at what point do they now sit on the other side as judges and pretend not to have any interest at all in this matter?
But Wakili,
Yes.
aren't you conflating individual and institution here? An individual member of the assembly
Yes.
can bring a motion and present a case, and this could be considered like a pre-trial hearing, where then the entire assembly listens and says, all right, so should we put the person and their defense to come and present this particular matter before us? Yes, we should. So should we do it as all 345 of us, or should we select a committee? Let's select a committee that represents us and will bring a report to us. Sounds to me like it's, we separate those two.
You might argue that way, but then by the time a motion is approved, it must be supported by at least 1/3
Yeah.
of there's a threshold. Some of these very members who are sitting now in this committee had interacted with accusations, formed an opinion that indeed I need to support this motion. So they've already taken a position. So you cannot then argue that you are able to separate yourself and the institution, because somehow you've supported or you have not supported the motion. So you've already taken a position. So the fact that you've taken a position on a matter that you're then supposed to be a neutral arbiter, that means you conflicted. You cannot argue that that was Parliament and this is me as a member of Parliament. It's one and the same thing.
So what's the ideal situation in such circumstances?
In an ideal situation that maybe the framers of the Constitution envisaged is that maybe we need to improve our the governing and enabling laws further, is to have a tribunal outside Parliament, just the same way we have tribunals investigating judges. You can have that because they're impartial. They will look at issues outside party positions. They will look at facts without fear of meeting your colleague in Parliament the following day. You did not support my motion. So in my and Omtata has filed a case in court arguing that we cannot have either the county assembly or the national assembly or even Senate investigating such a matter because it's a clear issue of conflict.
There's conflict.
There's conflict. So in my, and I agree with him 100%.
But where do you draw the line with oversight?
Oversight,
because as the National Assembly, first of all, you approved the appointment of this particular cabinet secretary, and then secondly, you've been oversighting the job that this CS has been doing. All right, so you call in, you ask for reports here and there, and then now it's a matter of impeachment, and you're saying that yes, we want to hear the facts as they are, and we want to hear from both sides. We want to hear maybe the MP who's presenting this is presenting this on and playing their representation role. I have received a petition from several people who are saying that a minister is breaking the law, there's gross violation of the Constitution and the law and this and the other. And they think that this minister does not deserve to be in office. We approved this person to be in office. We've been oversighting. So maybe we need to look at what has been brought before us. Then Parliament looks at, okay, are the matters being raised here weighty? We are not discussing whether they have, the deeper merits of it. Are the matters weighty? Are they meeting the basic thresholds? Yes, they do. And that's what Parliament then does and says, let's form a committee that goes deeper into these issues. And we hear from the accused and let the accused face the accuser. And the accuser in this particular case can be the MP who's brought the matter, and the witnesses can be the people who petitioned the MP.
I agree. Oversight is a separate issue. And in my understanding, is that when you're investigating an issue such as this, it does not begin with an impeachment motion. It should emanate from that committee that is in charge of agricultural issues. Let them take their time to investigate these issues.
Right.
Let them generate a report, because they are not bound by rules of procedure. They are not bound by the short time within which they must discharge their mandate. So we can have the oversight role discharged effectively if the agriculture committee is seized of this matter, invites farmers in the committee, visits sites, summons the manufacturers of these fertilizers, summons PSs, and then they generate a report. That is the report that then should be used as a basis for impeachment, because impeachment is the end result. It is actually a disciplinary action, because it does not speak of oversight per se.
Okay.
It is a communication of a sentence being passed, having been found to be guilty.
Would you say then that sort of almost works in the case of impeaching a governor? Because the governor's impeachment starts with whatever is happening in the county assembly. Then the county assembly passes to impeach. Then it comes to what is supposed to be now an independent arbiter, the Senate, that says we want to hear the facts. We have not participated in investigating this. We did not begin the motion. We did not debate the motion. The motion has come. The county assembly says this particular governor of ours has, or deputy governor, has violated the constitution and the laws. Let's investigate. So sort of here the Senate is a tribunal?
Indeed. The impeachment of a governor is governed by a slightly different regime of laws, because it's a two-tier process. You begin at the county assembly. The county assembly investigates the issues, forms an opinion, votes, and forwards that to the Senate. Then the Senate is given the opportunity to look at the issues afresh, and then establishes whether those accusations have been substantiated or not. So you can see that there's an opportunity for both the accused person and the accusers having, somehow a level playing field where they're going to, have their issues ventilated in an objective manner. But in this case, you have, 10 days to investigate an issue so serious as fake fertilizers. And then you're supposed to render a verdict within 10 days. I do not possibly think that that's fair in any way.
Too short a time.
Yes.
Would like to hear the difference in the two laws and the two procedures. Impeaching a governor or deputy governor, and now impeaching a cabinet secretary or a president. How different are they? And then what's the process? What happens now today when the committee presents its report? What are the next steps? This is why we've invited Elias Mutuma. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. As he has told us and reminded us, he has participated in several impeachment proceedings in the Senate. Twice in the impeachment against the governor of Meru County, Kawera Mwangaza. Once in the impeachment proceedings against the Siaya deputy governor. Kisii deputy governor, yes. And in both cases, you've been successful.
In the three cases.
In the three cases.
Yes.
Lakini Meru kuna shida. Meru sasa governor, former senator.
Now the CS.
The CS. Ay, bwana. So from governor, we've seen. Governor, deputy governor, it starts in the county assembly. All right? A motion is taken to the county assembly. County assembly deliberates, votes. If they vote yes, it goes to the Senate. If they vote no, it dies there. When it goes to the Senate, then the Senate is presented and it has timelines within which to prosecute this particular matter. Senate then will have, Senate cannot say nothing. Senate has to hear this particular matter, right? It is not given an opinion to say, can we vote to hear this matter from the county assembly, yes or no? No, they must. So they either select a committee or they decide to listen to it as the whole house. But they have a certain number of days within which they must come up with a report. And they have to end up with a vote to accept what the committee presents or to accept what all of them are saying, to accept to impeach or to reject to impeach. In the case of the National Assembly dealing with a cabinet secretary, what's the law? What does the law say? What's the procedure? Where does impeachment start? Where does it end?
As you've rightly pointed out, the removal from office of a governor or deputy governor is a process that it's a two-tier process to begin with. Begins at the county assembly. If that is if that meets the threshold, then a resolution is sent to Senate for Senate to sit and look at the issues afresh, see whether the charges and allegations have been substantiated. Now, the clear difference here is that it is Senate that removes the governor from office. Therefore, that is the proper case of impeachment. In the case of a county assembly, the National Assembly does not impeach. And I think we just borrowing impeachment from
what we've seen.
From what we've seen, but the National Assembly does not have powers to impeach.
Allah.
What they do is to recommend the removal
to the president.
Because
is that recommendation binding?
That recommendation is binding.
Okay.
And is final. The president has no choice.
Okay.
So the law is a motion is presented by a member of parliament. The member of parliament tables that motion. It has to be supported by at least 1/3 signatures of members of parliament. If that is done, then it is tabled in parliament, and they only have one avenue to follow, that is constitute a select committee.
Okay.
So unlike the impeachment of governors, where they can either go plenary or the committee way, in the process of removal of a cabinet secretary, there's only one route, that is the formation of a select committee, like in this case.
Okay.
So the select committee is selected from across the divide in the House, and they are now supposed to investigate within 10 days and table a report on whether the charges have been substantiated or not. If they find that indeed at least one, not all of them, just one,
at least one count
has been substantiated, they will table that in the floor of the House. The floor of the House will have an opportunity to debate on that one issue that has been substantiated, and then they will render their own resolution on whether to adopt or not to adopt the report. So,
go ahead.
Yes. So that means then, even if the CS was to be found guilty of one allegation, there is still another opportunity at the plenary for him to be able to defend himself effectively and garner enough numbers to drop the recommendation of the committee. Yes.
Is there a threshold when you say they must have something substantive? What's the threshold?
There is no threshold, unfortunately. They will just...
So it's just consensus?
It's just consensus.
As long as a majority of the members of that committee vote to hold one of the allegations, at least one of the allegations, then it goes.
It goes.
Okay.
In the
plenary, when this is presented before the plenary, and you said that then the CS then has another opportunity, can the plenary summon the CS?
The CS,
or do they only debate in the absence of the CS?
The CS has to be in the plenary.
Okay.
Because it is him who is being accused. These charges are against him, so he has to appear before, unless, of course, he forfeits that right.
Opts not to.
Okay. But he has to be present and defend himself now before...
In person.
In person. He has to be there in person and defend himself before the plenary. So if the plenary then chooses to...
Is he allowed legal representation?
Yes, he's allowed both legal representation and he has to appear in person. So in the event that the committee, like we've seen in the nation, I hope they're right. So in the event that the committee does not find the allegations to have been substantiated, they'll still table the report, but the House will not discuss the report. They will not at
Right.
all.
So if the committee says there are no grounds here for
That matter
removal
rests.
of office, that's it.
That's it.
It ends there.
Not a comment on the report. Not even one.
Not even a single MP can stand up and say, but Mr. Speaker, Buana, but...
No, you will not be allowed to comment on the merits of the report.
And the CS goes back to
And the
office
CS
and
goes
continues
back,
serving.
yes.
That's
Same
it.
case to the impeachment of governors. Like in the Governor Kawira's issue.
Yeah.
The moment the first impeachment was through a committee, and once the Bon Kalwale's committee presented a report finding that the allegations have not been substantiated, the Senate was not allowed to debate
That matter ended there.
there. And that's what we expect, if indeed what Nation is saying is true.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, in the event that the committee comes back and says one or all of the charges have merit, and then there is now discussion and debate in the plenary, they go to a vote.
Yes.
What is the nature of that vote?
Simple majority. Just simple majority, as long as there is quorum in the House.
Simple majority
Simple
carries the day.
majority, yes.
And
carries
quorum
the
is
day.
what percentage?
Is it usually that?
According to the standing orders, quorum of the National Assembly is how many MPs? It's
Exactly 30.
I think
I
130.
think 30 something.
Yeah.
Okay. So as long as a simple majority says we agree or we don't agree,
Yes.
that's
That's
it.
Yes.
okay. In that case, is this a judicial process really, or is it a political process?
I started by saying it is supposed to be a quasi-judicial process. Quasi-judicial means that we're supposed to have a semblance of what happens in court, but then there is no possibility of that happening. It is purely a political process because, number one, Parliament, it's a house of numbers. So, and in any case, unlike the impeachment of governors, where the president has no stake, in the case of where you want to recommend the removal of his own CS, it's a serious indictment to the president himself and to his government. So obviously you would expect the president to have a say in what is happening, because this was, I mean, among all the other candidates that could have been chosen for this ministry, he settled for the CS Mithika. So if you're telling him that this particular minister is corrupt, that he presided over the sale of fake fertilizers, and we know, food security is one of the key agendas of this government. What are you saying? You're actually pointing a finger directly to the president. So I think, and I know that definitely politics is at play here. You cannot rule that out.
I don't understand why is it that one action seems to be pointing at a different individual? Why is it that if certain steps are taken, it would appear then that it is the fingers are all pointing at the president? How does that come about?
Because at the end of the day, the president takes ultimate responsibility for his cabinet and his cabinet ministers. And unless it is the president himself who cracked the whip against, a particular minister for being rogue, then if it is coming from elsewhere, then it's not good for the president. Unless the president was the first to say, well, I have seen something wrong in this ministry, and this is my decision, then he will be exonerated. But if it is coming from outside, however you look at it, it will still be a serious indictment to his government.
If a president has leeway and command of the numbers in the assembly, do you ever see an impeachment going through? Based on what you've said,
yes.
Look, an impeachment of a cabinet secretary, remember the president has an open check on the nomination of cabinet secretaries. He can decide today to choose Elias Mutuma to be the cabinet secretary for whatever. It's his choice. He only takes that name to Parliament, and Parliament looks at the suitability of this person. They do not summon the president to ask him, so why did you choose Elias? Did you ask for CVs from 7? Did you ask, for example, CT and we know CT? They don't. They only look at, so Elias, you've been brought here. Prove to us that you're suitable and you understand the job at hand. And that's it, right? So once Parliament approves the appointment of Elias Mutuma into the cabinet, it is the president's prerogative from then on to either transfer Elias from this ministry to another docket, to suspend Elias, or to fire Elias. A president does not do that. A National Assembly decides to recommend to him to remove his own appointee. If Parliament actually were to tell the president to remove a certain minister, you said it basically reflects on the president. Is there a possibility that a president can actually use that route to remove a minister?
Well, yes and no. One is that we have people who have serious stakes in governments, all right? And there might arise a situation whereby the president is not bold enough to show you the door for obvious reasons, okay? In that case, then a route might be engineered for the president not to be seen to be the person behind for political reasons, and say, look, it had nothing to do with me. Parliament did its work. So if it were to happen, then you would know that is what is happening, that he did not interfere with the process because ultimately that was the desired outcome. So if an impeachment takes place through Parliament of a sitting CS, then it is because the appointing authority
wanted it
is
to
okay
happen.
with that.
But then the opposite also holds true.
That
If indeed he does not seem to have either endorsed the process but had let it follow its natural course, whatever the outcome, whether he's impeached or not, you could deduce that, in fact, that was the desired outcome.
I do not disagree with that because, I mean, Parliament is run through the House leadership, majority and minority, and we know how they are mobilized and how they are whipped to take certain things. So this is a motion just like any other motion.
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be a party position on any motion that is in the floor of the House.
Yeah.
So the question is, what is the party position?
You see, this one is interesting
Yes.
because when it came to the numbers that enable the process to begin, it was seen that members of parliament from both sides of the divide participated, and that is why the numbers were garnered that easily.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so now the decision to have certain people within the committee, now this is where now the discussion becomes interesting. Who decides who is in that committee?
It is the majority leader and the minority leader. And we know who
It's the
speaks.
leadership in the House
Yes.
that proposes the names.
Yes.
Kawerekwe mzuri sana atare mheshimiwa yupi mzuri na
Yes.
sitiwe kakando mambo yako tunajua.
What does it mean for? So we've seen if this impeachment were to go through, right? We can see what it means to the president politically, the image. What does it mean when the impeachment does not go through on a matter such as this one, where the president himself has actually spoken about the bad fertilizer being distributed? You know, if it was a matter where even we can just say, hii ilikuwa siasa ya that journalist, was he called? Nyamu, John Aran. We just left it at that.
Yes.
But even here, the president himself has spoken not once, not twice, and said, yes, the issue of fertilizer, we are going to deal with it because it was wrong, and the people who are responsible and culpable for distribution of whatever word he used, right? He did not use the word fake. The bad fertilizer.
Substandard, I think.
The substandard, I think, yeah? The people who are involved in the distribution of the substandard fertilizer shall be held culpable, and we shall not allow this to happen. So the president has spoken about this, meaning that the president has acknowledged that there was something wrong, that there's something that is actually just going to puncture one thing that he has come out loudly and spoken about and said: subsidy at production. Food security is paramount. Fertilizer is the way to go. And then somebody is sabotaging that, and he has come out and fought it. But then his CS, who's in charge of it, who should have overseen that this thing does not happen, or taken action to avert its happening, or taken action immediately correct what was, is spared in Parliament. What is that politically? How does that look?
Well, I said there wasn't any good thing coming out of this impeachment. It was a doomed if you do, doomed if you don't, because if the impeachment sailed through, then it's a serious indictment to the president's judgment and integrity, because then one of your most trusted and most critical departments has been found to be corrupt. If he doesn't, then what happens to the fight against corruption? So it is a delicate balancing act for him, especially, and I think here politics will carry the day. But then what I expect them to do, and by them I mean government and even the CS, if he gets off the hook, is that we will have serious sacrificial lambs somewhere to appease the public.
Heads will roll.
Heads will roll. Heads will roll. So that's what I expect.
You know,
They'll give us Barabbas.
They'll give us Barabbas, a known murderer.
Yes, that's what I expect.
You know, Mheshimiwa, this discussion gets even more interesting.
Wakili. He'll be Mheshimiwa.
Maybe he's promoting me to a Mheshimiwa.
Wajua, kilichoko ni hiki mwananchi wa Kenya ambaye anastahili kuheshimiwa ni mheshimiwa.
Bas, sawa.
Mwite wakili kwa sababu ndio kinafaa wakati usio. If I look at the process by which heads of states in this country appoint, when they have the power, their ministers, okay? It's a mixed bag. There are people who have a track record of having worked well in certain positions, so the debate around it is minimal. There are those who clearly are close to the leader. There are those who clearly have a constituency behind them whom this particular leader would like to also have on his side. That's why I call it a mixed bag. There are many other things that happen. But if we look at this particular government, the one thing that seems to be consistent, there was always a question about the numbers of people and individuals who are appointed. Some who had cases in court, they were acquitted. Some who had backgrounds that were more questionable than they were not, they were appointed. So now, for whatever reason, if indeed such a person is then accused of something that is wrong, how then do you point a finger at the president? I'm asked this question because it's like saying that the president is a soothsayer, that he can actually see beyond what is obvious, and that he can actually tell ahead of time that this person will do this. People get into positions of authority and they change. Some for the better, some for worse.
Yeah.
Okay? So the holder of this particular cross ought to be the person who has actually been charged, not necessarily the appointing officer.
I agree with you. But the question is, at what point then do you take responsibility as, the
appointing authority?
Because must you wait until Parliament does that for you? What about the cases that do not make their way to Parliament? Because you have the authority to hire and fire. So what then we expect, and that's why I'm saying it's a balancing act for the president, is that the moment you discovered that there was a problem, act on it. If you do not act on it, and then you allow Parliament to act, what are you saying about your capacity? That's why it cannot be Parliament doing this.
In the history of this country, how often have we seen the president of the country asking people to step down? It has happened.
Yes.
I'm asking, how often do we see it?
Rarely, and especially during the first term, because you banking on these same people to support you.
Uhuru did this in his first term.
Yes.
And he asked six
Yes.
to step aside.
Yes.
And PSs.
Yes.
Did it cost him politically?
One could argue it did.
How? he got re-elected.
Re-election in this country, once you're president, is a foregone conclusion. I don't even know why it is. We debate it.
Because immediately after it,
Yes.
remember Uhuru addressed Parliament and he said, I am fighting corruption. I have had a conversation with the EACC. They have told me they're investigating part of my executive
Yes.
officers, and therefore I am asking them to step aside for the investigations to conclude.
Yes.
And they were asked to step aside. Did it cost him?
Were the people who asked to step aside, did they have stakes in that government? Did they call shots?
Calling shots.
Yes.
Well,
Or they were replaceable.
One of them was one of the quartet.
Yes.
Yeah, one of them was one of the quartet that formed the Jubilee coalition, Charity Ngilu.
Yes.
Remember, Jubilee was Ruto, Uhuru, Ngilu, Balala.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Ngilu was among them. So yes, it was,
And you cannot argue that Ngilu was a powerhouse.
Yeah, true.
You see, I don't seem to understand. You see, the path is, even if someone is asked to step aside, doesn't mean they cannot come back.
But
the stepping aside is just for the purpose of the investigation.
But the perception and the control you lose from where these people come from, it's a serious consideration you have to make.
so we blame the people. We blame us. Because we look back and say, "Umetom to etu."
Exactly. And you've been hearing our people saying that. I come from Meru myself, so I know what I'm saying. There was no way you're going to separate this fight from...
What if the president actually removed Mithika and put in another Meru?
That would have worked, but again, Mithika is a force to reckon with in the region.
He's not small fish.
Is he the only force to reckon
He
with?
might not be the only one, but I'm saying as of now, he's a force to reckon with.
Okay.
Yes.
If the president had not appointed Mithika into the cabinet and appointed another Meru into the cabinet,
Maybe myself, yes.
See?
yes,
Yeah.
would there have been some mumbling on the ground? That hapana, unapatia Mutuma, who is Mutuma?
In fact, if we were to give an example, let's say it was you who had been selling whatever it is in the name of fertilizer,
Yes.
and you're removed,
Yes.
and Mithika was given your position.
Well, I think I'm a small fish, honestly.
Or you've retreated to that one. No?
I think I'm a small fish.
All right.
I can't compare to the good CS. He's a good friend of mine, and I know the kind of influence he wields in the region.
Do you believe, as we conclude in just 20 seconds, just the yes or no, do you believe that Mithika Linturi faced his accuser before the select committee?
I do not think he was given that opportunity to face his accuser.
But the accuser was there. It's Jack Wanami. It's on record.
I would have expected, to be fair, Eric, for the Kenyan farmer to be the main accuser of the CS. They failed to do that because they brought people who were not victims. So if they had done a little bit of some research and taken a little bit of some time,
Bring a farmer
Bring
who
a
says,
farmer
I
who-
got
Yes.
Muchanga,
yes,
Muchangarawe,
yes,
and this is the man responsible.
that
Could have been
should
a
have
better
been the
case.
accuser, yes. And maybe it would have made all the difference.
Thank
I
you.
think they failed in that.
Elias Mutuma is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, an experienced man in the matters of removal of public office and state officers from office. No, saving them from being
Saving
removed. He's been our guest.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.